Welcome back, everyone, to the Nerding Grounds podcast. This is a weekly show where we talk about new and old video games. And this week, specifically, we're talking about a new one, Armored Core 6. I'm Quinn, and I'm joined by Matt. Hi.
Hi.
How you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Considering we've finally got a new mech game.
We finally got a new mech game. Oh, it's been a while.
It has been a very long time. I guess there's been other ones that have come out, but nothing Armored Core, right? A lot of tactical sort of like tile-based tactics type of games, right? Which is fine, but not how I like my mechs,
Yeah, nothing that makes you feel like a towering giant robot stepping on small buildings and crushing cars and shooting things with lasers and grenades and bullets and laser swords.
And thrusters. Boy, do I love thrusters.
Oh yeah. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the topic at hand, is there anything else that has been piquing your interest this past week, or has it just been Armored Core?
Basically been avoiding everything else, right? There's just too much going on. I did download what's the RPG?
Sea of Stars?
Yeah. I downloaded Sea of Stars, right? Because it is on
Game Pass.
Game Pass.
I saw that,
but
yeah.
I haven't played it. And I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity because there's an urge to really want to play it, but I'm just like, well, I mean, Armored Core 6 is great, and I definitely want to give that its due diligence before, we get Starhold.
Right. And yeah, and I know that I think I said this last week, when it comes to games like that, if I dip my toe in the water and then get hijacked by something else like Starhole, that game might just be lost. And so I'd rather wait until I have the time to really dive into it. So I think I'm just gonna hold off and maybe get it on Switch or something in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also been mostly dealing with Armored Core. I did get into a little retro modding again and went ahead and modded my 3DS, and now I have a modded 3DS, and it's really cool. I'm super glad I did it. It was easier than I thought it was going to be, although I have never been less sure of what I'm doing while I'm doing it.
Sometimes you just need to dive on in and hope for the best.
Well, that being said, I didn't run into any difficulties. I just had no idea what the hell was going on. I was just looking down at, essentially, I understand for the most part, you're booting custom firmware that, you format an SD card, load it up with custom firmware, run that custom firmware, use the 3DS's internet browser as sort of a backdoor to trick your 3DS into booting all that firmware and installing it. And then from there, you can take ROMs that you've gathered totally legally gathered ROMs by, taking them directly from cartridges and games that you own. That's absolutely what I did. And, it's cool because you're installing it directly. So you're really not even emulating. You're running it on native 3DS hardware. So I have all of my DS and 3DS games loaded up, ready to go whenever I want to play. And it's cool because the 3DS is just, I guess I forgot how awesome that piece of hardware is.
Yeah.
Because it's been collecting dust for so long.
I know. The Switch killed it, but it was great. It's good. Well built.
Yeah. That's the thing. I picked it up and I felt the D-pad and I clicked the buttons and I was just like, oh my God, this is what Nintendo systems used to feel like. I love the Switch. Joy-Cons kind of trash.
Sorry. the little nubby on the 3DS far
Yeah, it's okay.
surpasses the like PSP one, the
Yeah,
original
that
PSP one.
yeah, that it's as far as nubbies go,
Yeah.
it's much better.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Little rotating nipple.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
That said
yeah,
all of
so
it, really.
yeah. So I kind of have completed my handheld retro setup for the time being. It's like I was running into an issue with playing 3DS and DS games because while it worked on my Odin, it wasn't ideal, and so now I feel much better.
I don't have too many issues on computer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which I mean, that's just I guess there's certain hardware limitations on a smaller handheld system. Though I believe that that's Android based, right?
hmm And it's not as much
Mhm.
the limitations for running the software as it just is you have to kind of adjust how you're playing it. And so
Right.
you don't have a dual screen. And so you either have to make one, you have to put them side by side or make one smaller or switch which screen you're primarily looking at.
And you know what? I
Um,
didn't even think about that. I don't
yeah.
know if I have. Yeah, I haven't really played like an actual 3DS
Yeah.
title where dual screen comes into play. Interesting.
It's totally doable for almost every game that I was interested in. It just doesn't feel, I don't know. It something was missing with the experience and I'm like I'd rather play this on a DS.
Even still, like on a PC where I just have more space to work with,
Mhm.
that just makes more sense than whether
Yeah.
you're trying to sit there and fiddle with two screens on one small screen. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, don't get me wrong, like this thing has a lot of space
Right.
to play.
About a switch, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
about the touch.
exactly. And so, but I don't know, just wanted
Yeah.
to play it like
No,
it's
no,
supposed to be
no.
played. Kind of like a Vita. I want to look into emulation for Vita, but there's a lot of games that require touch sensitive. I don't know. We'll see. But that's where I am right now. It's cool. I'm playing the first Mario and Luigi RPG that was remastered for 3DS or remade for 3DS, the Game Boy Advance one. So,
Yeah. That was good. The
yeah,
first one's good. Yeah.
yeah. But enough about all that. Let's talk about From Software.
From Software, specifically Armored Core 6. We finally got it, right? It went
Yep.
from literally went from never even hoping. There was a lot of hope that one day we would get a new Armored Core, but I really didn't think we would ever get one at all.
Yeah.
And here we are,
Yeah.
right?
Let's switch
Like,
over to the Armored Core Ner.
nerd. Is that what we're calling it?
Kind of kind of have to now.
Yeah. The Armored Core nerd.
Ner.
You know? I don't get
Um,
it.
so for those of you who are out of the loop, I don't know why you'd be listening to this very, very specific episode, but if you are, love you. Glad to have you here. From Software went and dusted off their old franchise Armored Core, for which I think there have been like 15 titles over the course of the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3. It's I think it was only a Sony franchise, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um,
Is
yeah,
this
and
one on it's not like on Xbox or anything. Well,
I
Armored
don't
Core
know.
4, like the four answers was the Xbox version of like 4, right? Or was it
I thought
something
I
else
played
entirely?
that on I played that on PlayStation 3.
That was on Xbox 360 though, I
Was
think.
it?
But that's like the first time, you know?
Yeah, you can play it on Xbox.
It
And
was
there
definitely like PlayStation 1, 2,
yes.
and then they had some other titles. I think there was one for the PSP and all that good
Yeah.
stuff.
You are correct. There are multiple on Xbox. But it basically skipped an entire generation of consoles and didn't show up on the PS4 or Xbox One at all until now. So we finally have us a next gen, whatever the hell that means, Armored Core title. And by golly, is it next gen? In a lot of cases. At the
Yeah.
same time, the format of the game is still very much it brings me back to that PlayStation 2
Yeah.
era of game design.
I was literally gonna talk about that, right? In almost a good way. It does remind me a lot about a whole different era of gaming, right?
Yes.
Though, might as well get it out of the way. If I had one sort of gripe, I say sort of because I don't know what a non-mission based Armored Core really could look like or would look like. But it it
We
doesn't feel bad, but I do wish there was a bit more of an immersive experience where there
Yeah,
was
it can feel a little boxed in as far as everything is menu based and the
yeah,
cuts, you we had a few thoughts after the whole what was it Summer Game Fest
right,
reveal. We did talk about it then and saying, is this going how much of is this going to employ modern From Software elements? Are we going to
right.
have exploration? Are we going to have this? And no, it just it it really doesn't rewrite that format.
Yeah, like a little bit though. So I
Mm.
mean, again, I do remember saying, it's what I wanted was them to take what they've learned from, their Dark Souls or their Souls series and just bring that into Armored Core. And basically, that's exactly what they did. They took all the little nuances and then just brought it into literally just Armored Core. They didn't change the Armored Core structure, but there is, intermission exploration, right? There's a lot of reasons to go back. Boss fights are huge, very
Yeah.
just like From Software, probably some of them like From Software at their finest here.
Oh, for sure. But I think you could still give this to someone and they might not realize, if they didn't know the developer, they might not think that this was
Oh no,
connected to
yeah,
the Souls franchise unless you were like, "Oh yeah, this is from software."
yeah, they might get some, of the same sort of. I don't even know because it plays very much so its own thing, but there are some similarities when it comes to like combat if in like the boss fight scenarios,
Mhm.
but um yeah, it is very different, it is very
Yeah.
Armored Core. It's not a Souls like whatsoever, but
Right, right. But, I definitely see what you mean by the way that
they're
you
just
tackle
different
certain
elements
challenges.
that they know work at this point, right? Because they're the ones that
Yeah.
put those elements on the map for game development, and they definitely ported those over.
And that all being said, I think the thing that surprised me most about this Armored Core, it's a lot more forgiving than I think I expected. Because FromSoft has an intimidation factor that comes
Right.
with each of the games, especially something like Sekiro, where I was afraid to move to the next section because, oh my god, I put everything I had into killing that freaking monkey. I have no idea what's coming next. It's going to kick my ass.
Yeah.
Uh, this, you do have a stress level of like how am I going to have to completely throw out my mech and start over to try and tackle this next challenge? But you have checkpoints throughout missions, and unless you're trying to go back and get like an S ranking, which you can do, you beat the mission, and then that becomes available for replay, and then you can do it as many times as you want to get an S ranking. But if you're not trying to do that, you can retry that checkpoint as much as you want. And every time you go to that checkpoint, you're going to get your health back, your healing kits, and you're going to get all of your ammunition back.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really penalize you for doing that. And so you can sit there and fight, a hard boss as many times as it takes. You can reassemble and re-equip your mech in between those fights too without having to redo the entire level. So that was surprising.
It is. It is. I mean, that's one thing where it completely separates itself from Souls. Like, there isn't really. There's no downside to dying, right?
Yeah.
Like at most, at the end of the mission, you get less money based off repair costs, and I'm pretty sure that caps. Like once you die once, there's no difference from you dying 50 times from there.
I don't think.
That I
Yeah, I don't
that
think
I
so.
noticed. It doesn't. I never noticed it like bottoming out to zero. You know.
No, but I did watch. So from watching Vati Video's channel, which is my favorite channel for any From Software lore, um, tips, beginners tips, advanced tips, whatever. If you're playing a From Soft game, check out Vati Video. He's great. You can go in the negative if you try hard enough. You can, but I think it depends
Really?
on the mission, because certain missions put a real emphasis on like ammo, other missions put a real emphasis on health. And so if you bring out like your strongest guns and just expend everything and die a bunch of times and you just play as poorly as you can go into the negative, but it's like negative 50K. It's not anything. And I
Yeah.
think you have to really try to get into the negative. So most of the time, you're going to get 75% of the reward that the mission offers just
Yeah.
from spending ammo and getting hurt.
I which is kind of interesting considering I'm pretty sure the original Armored Cores you could always go into negative, right? Like that was
Mm-hmm.
always a
The
factor for losing a mission. Probably what led to that philosophy probably actually led to the Dark Souls philosophy of there being significant
risk.
downsides, yeah, to dying and risks. That of
Yeah.
course alleviate over time, right?
Yeah.
And in here they decide to almost get rid of all that altogether.
Yeah.
But I do think that allowed them to really push the limits on some of these like boss fights and stuff like that, right? Because I mean, I've definitely gotten my butt kicked relentlessly by some bosses until I kind of just figured out maybe what was going on with the boss, but
Go
what
back to the drawing
maybe
board.
yeah, what was going on with the game in general.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They feel so like even things like you're just constantly getting hit no matter what. There's so many things you just can't avoid and can't dodge. It's so many things just going on there. And it's really you're kind of almost dodging like the big hits and missiles and stuff. I feel like if there was any real significance to you dying, that would just be too much, or that would feel like too much, right? Like even getting hit like once or twice and getting that much closer to death would probably um, make a lot of people freak out, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and apparently some of those early bosses did cause some people to, I guess, become intimidated by the game
Right.
before realizing that, you know, a difficulty barrier is really just an opportunity for you to go back to the drawing board and see what weapons you can switch out. I mean, I guess this is a good time for us to go into constructing your mechs, because that is half, if not more, of this game. I personally
Essence.
think I spend more time in menus. Um, and that's not even including customization, like color schemes and
Right.
emblems like we were talking about earlier. We both have put in an obnoxious amount of time into creating our custom emblems.
Yeah.
And I
And
can
I'm normally not even like I I would say I'm normally not that type of person because if I get into it, I go down a rabbit hole. But
but when it's something like this and it gives you that freedom to really,
yeah,
get lost in it and immersed in it, I can't help myself. I'm like, I know I want this to look like how it would look if I was a mercenary fighting in a giant mech.
yeah. To which my
Um,
emblem is very important. And they basically give you like now that I think about it, like a Photoshop with
yeah,
pre-selected images for you to just do
cobble
whatever it
stuff
is you
together.
can think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean mech the whole mech design menu has always been the big thing about Armored Core. Probably one of the things that have even either drawn you to the series or turned you away entirely, right? There is a lot of numbers,
Yeah.
but just like previous Armored Cores. This one's probably even better at it. It it can either be as simple as you want it to be, or as complex as you need it to be, right? Because you can just go like, okay, hey, I'm in blue right now, like I'm not overloaded.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I but either by weight or energy, that's all I need to know. I'm good to go. As long as this feels right in a mission, who cares? Or you can just look at like the individual stats and realize, okay, well, like, yeah, this part maybe have overall lower defenses, but it is better in energy defenses or what have you, and this and that, right? My boosters are stronger, or whatever, better at melee combat, like
And
my mech.
that's kind of the amazing, I think that's the big catch of the game. Once you really start getting into it and getting you realize that the intuitiveness is just kind of unlike anything I've seen in another game, especially recently. Um, you can look at this screen of numbers and specs and be completely overwhelmed. And that's normal because I felt that when I was starting to play too, because, everything is considered, weight, thrust, um, handling of each of the different weapons, impact, uh,
Yeah,
percentage, everything you can possibly think of. And it's not just there as an arbitrary number, like, oh, this weapon changes those stats for the better. No, everything is a trade-off. Everything is
yeah,
personal preference and what you're comfortable using. Now, you can make a build that doesn't work and it'll tell you energy output's not working, this has to be fixed, and you start to figure out what goes with what. And a lot of it is weight based,
right.
but you start to get an idea for this, and then you take it out into the field either through testing or replaying an old mission or playing a new mission, and you can feel the differences with every weapon. You can feel the differences with your weight as you're boosting and as you're dodging. It's like, okay, I
Yeah.
change this part, I change my generator, my chipset, and now my mech feels totally different.
I
And it's
love how you can
overwhelming, but
even feel.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go
Well,
ahead.
just on that, even feeling the difference, because I said I do love thrusters, right? I don't know why. You can feel the difference in the thrusters being like, okay, some are good at just quick bursting, right? And then, but some have like overall better thrust, but then other ones have like less thrust but a longer boost duration, right? So you're going farther at a slower rate, or you're going slightly less far but much quicker. Some are like the cooldown times when you can like
Hmm.
in between bursts are lower or higher.
And
But
then you
I
have
mean
like your
that's
recharge.
yeah. Then you have your recharge, and that's not everything either, right? Because it's not about your quick burst either. It's about your overall movement, and you're also in the game you do have the ability to quickly like blast forward, right, or in different
Yes.
directions towards an enemy. Some thrusters are better at that, right, if you really want to close the gap in on something very quickly, which
Yeah.
does, I mean, and it is kind of all preference, right? But at the same time, when you start to think about making a build, it's like, okay, well, hey, if I want to be like melee or something, do I want the thrusters um that allow me to close that gap really quickly, or do I want the thrusters that are specifically designed for like melee thrusting? Uh,
Yeah. And then you have
or
like your general thrust speed
yeah,
and weight, which will allow you to
trade
just,
offs.
yeah, you allow you to strafe and not get hit by a lot of stuff. Then if you're heavier, you might get peppered by a lot of the missiles and things like that.
Yeah,
Um, so,
which play
starting
well on
out,
board.
I was trying to make a light, speedy thing because I'm like, oh, that's just kind of what I
Mhm.
go for in games anyway.
Yeah,
And then, fast forward to now, and I'll clip them here. In the edit, I have four main things that I'm switching between. Like I have my main guy, which is that's kind of like a tanky but still speedy build, that uses like mid-range stuff and just two obnoxiously powerful cannons on the back. And I've learned how to that's kind of my all around. If something's too difficult, I break that out, and it's very likely I'm going to have an easier time getting past that challenge. And then I have my quadruped one that can float in the air and just rain down bazooka, it from the air, and it since it's so heavy, it has less recoil, so it has no problem shooting those really heavy weapons. Then I have my assassin build that has just like two small pistols and two really light, you know, little missile bursts,
Missile. Yeah.
and then like an all-around one that I play around with. So yeah, fast forward to now, I have all this institutional knowledge.
I often just find myself hot swapping what I need. I mean, now I've kind of like settled into things that just kind of work. But I think a lot of that too. First of all, the game does actually do a earlier on. There's certain instances where you might feel the need to swap to specific weapons and do specific things, but later on, it starts to just give you like more and more tools towards um, a specific build. I mean, you can do whatever you want. That's perfectly
Yeah.
fine. Even cool. I'll probably build like a big old like heavy arms dude, but it I think it does the game as a whole does a very good job of just kind of letting you do what it is you want to do, whether
And
that's
you can
multiple
experiment.
things. Yeah, you can. Yeah, freely. It encourages it heavily. You
There
know.
is no risk factor in the shop, because when you go back to the menu, you can buy and sell parts. You get 100% refund on everything that you sell. So you can buy something, try it out. If it sucks, sell it back. You get all the funds back. Um, Tell me about your build, I guess. That's the best way to explain.
Yeah, that is the best way to explain. So, yeah, for example, I'm a energy based, right? So heavy on the energy based weapons, but kind of medium close range build. There is definitely a focus on the beam saber attacks and melee focus. Like especially my arms are very good at melee damage. And I'm
Hmm.
on I guess I'm kind of medium, but on the lighter side for sure. So I'm like right at that cusp. I don't know if there's a what particular weight class you would consider a medium build, but it has a mixture
Yeah,
of
yeah,
medium and light parts that actually work pretty well. I seem to be relatively have decent AC while being or just armor while being mobile, right? So I can get in, deal some melee damage, take a hit. But and I just like energy weapons. I don't know why. Even though
me too.
the the kinetic, right, or your typical
Your guns.
yeah, are definitely cool. Especially if we're adding in explosions, which is its own category, but or all the missiles and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, who doesn't want to just fire like a billion missiles and stuff?
yeah,
But I do like the energy based weapons, definitely. And then the melee is really to just so you since you don't have I don't really have too many like explosions or impact from my weapons. The melee, of course, delivers probably the most in the game.
yeah,
Uh
yeah.
so that's kind of why I'm focused a lot on that. And then if my weapons do happen to break their stagger, then I can do a devastating amount of damage with the
Oh, those swords,
consumer. Yeah.
if they do direct hits, they're insane.
Yeah, they do a lot of
Um, your AP, are you like below 10,000, or do you remember?
I'm at 10,000.
At
With
10,000.
my
Okay.
current build, I'm like 10,400 or something like that.
I'd call that mid-range as far
Yeah.
as weight goes. That's kind of what unlocked my brain. I went through the menu and I sorted everything by weight. And for some reason that works for me to know where I am on
Yeah.
the scale of how heavy I'm making this. And then you could look at things like your boost speed and stuff. But I'm a little bit heavier on my main gal. She's a tanky broad,
Yeah.
but she's around like 12.
She's a sturdy gal.
She's a battle axe. She's around like 12.5 thousand. Um,
Okay.
and then I use a lot, like a mix of energy and explosives, but I don't use kinetic at all because I don't know, it wasn't working for me. The energy weapons do
Yeah.
such a good, I don't know, when they hit, they really hit, and then they like tend to burn down, like a DOT damage.
Yeah. Well, I think the kinetic weapons will definitely destroy the stagger bar like extremely quickly for a lot of them. The bigger rifles, but I always kind of feel like that's how the game has always been. They feel a little lackluster, like the just your typical kinetic assault rifles and stuff.
Yeah, it's like I want to use them because they're light, they have a fast attack speed, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just I used I used those big hefty laser rifles and just these giant cannons on the back, and basically I just run up into something's face, fire both those cannons,
Yeah.
which at that point I've zoomed in, they can't really dodge it, breaks their stagger, and then so most of my especially arena fights wind up being like two stagger breaks and then just half of a health bar melted, and that's just kind of how I've been doing it. And then I also have coupled with some grenade launchers, like the napalm one, that does damage over time, and so I
Yeah.
kind of have like a damage over time cannon build, and so that's been my go-to.
I do like how, again, some of that's been a part of the series, but I do like how there's different sort of status build-ups that you can throw into the mix too, like
Yeah.
lightning or the fire and stuff. Did you find the flamethrower?
Yeah, off that guy that's
Yeah, yeah,
just has clearly gone crazy.
yeah,
And he's
yeah.
just like,
Because
I did.
that would be cool to use. I mean, it definitely seems.
That's definitely a close range
Oh yeah,
type.
yeah,
So if you coupled that with a sword, I bet it would be. Because from what I looked up, the fire status, when that builds up all the way, I think you'll take like severe direct hit damage once your stagger actually breaks.
yeah.
So that could be really useful.
That's probably good, especially with like a the impact driver thing. Probably just
That thing's cool
annihilate.
too.
Yeah,
I just got a lance last night, like a power lance that
yeah, and
basically just has jets on the back of it, and
yeah, I just unlocked that. It's super cool.
I
It
like how straight it goes.
yeah, it's not like as strong as some of the other weapons, really,
But
but
it hits a lot more.
yeah, it does hit a lot more, and it's actually very. The only difference is it's heavy as hell.
Yeah.
But it's very consistent because you just rocket towards people
It's true.
and hit them, but it does destroy stagger very quickly
Yeah. Yeah.
too. Fun
Um,
weapon. And
have you
laser cannons
used
are fun too. Did you notice
Yeah,
there's
laser cannons are
funnels too? I don't
fun.
know if they had that in previous Armored Core. Funnels is it's from Gundam, but it's little things that follow you around and shoot lasers at
Oh,
people.
like auto turrets and stuff?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they're totally have
I
that.
haven't used one yet, but I bought one last night to swap in. That's the thing. I'll buy anything that I find interesting, and I'll just kind of have it ready to switch in and out.
Same.
Um, have you used
And it
the
all just
reverse
seems so
joint legs?
interesting.
It
Oh
is. Have
yeah,
you
I loved like the hoppers quite a bit. So I don't use them currently. I think you do have to sacrifice a lot by using them,
And I think you have to
but
get used to the movement
yeah,
too.
it can almost be like detrimental, but just sheerly from I guess the obviously they're good kind of aerial stuff, but they they quick burst incredibly far,
Yeah.
incredibly
Yeah.
quickly. So they are, sometimes that can get you like too far away though. I don't
Yeah.
know. You do have to. I would say they are more advanced to use, definitely.
I find them useful for my assassin build where, like I said, I just basically use two laser pistols that And this is what freaking gave me carpal tunnel when I texted you the other night because I'm just doing this, and those,
Oh yeah.
and I'm playing on not only that, I'm playing on PlayStation 5, so those freaking haptic triggers, they feel like actual gun triggers at this point. And so I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Uh,
and then I just have two laser or pulse missiles on my back, and so
right. Which are great.
mostly what I'm focusing on is just firing and dodging. And so I like the reverse joint because you can leap without using your boost. And so I don't ever really run out of boost energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
it, I yeah, I can't say those were in. Well, I just love the addition to those, and then the fact that they really separated different leg types in this one. You know, there's definitely a huge impact. Of course, like tanks were always that, you can carry the most amount of stuff if you have tank track legs or
yeah.
whatever. Of course, they have the smaller ones now too that make you pretty pretty ridiculously fast, actually.
Oh, the small tank treads.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
but
Little baby tank.
the quadrupeds, that was kind of like a bipedal sort of feeling, but it can carry more, right? So it never really separated itself from the tank legs too much. Separate, of
Right.
course, like vertical thrust maybe, but I love how in this one they can just permanently hover. You
Yeah, it
know?
just turns into an airship.
Yeah,
And that's what, like, I'll equip really heavy cannons on that, go above whatever, and just rain hell down. And I don't have
yeah.
to worry about recoil. I don't have to worry about, losing out on energy too fast. It's really fun to just switch back and forth depending on what the challenge brings. Should we talk about some of the levels? Because there's some neat ones. And I guess I should say, spoiler warnings, we're gonna talk about whatever we've experienced. This,
There might be some big spoilers from here.
I'm like on chapter 4. I don't know where you are.
I think right around chapter 4. I'm in the depths. You've done that. It sounds like we might be around the same area.
Did you
You just
beat
got
this?
the
Did you
lance.
did you beat the snake?
Yeah, I beat the snake.
I'm so glad you beat the snake. I wanted to
Yeah,
talk to you about that.
yeah.
Um,
It's super cool, right?
it is really cool. I mean, you got your buddy that comes out and he's working the cannon, and
Yeah,
you
I
kind of
love
have
that guy. I hope he doesn't betray me. I
Rusty.
love,
No, I
yeah,
know, right? He calls you buddy all the time, and I was gonna say the missions really differ in their layout. You have your sometimes it's nothing but going and killing a few squads, and then back off,
I kind of like
and
the
then
G13 guy too, right? They actually, now that I think about it, they have some good
they have some good
characters.
personalities in there. I mean, I
Yeah,
hate most of them,
right.
especially
But
Snail Man.
oh well, he's supposed to be a dick.
He's supposed to be a dick, but he's the worst dick. I wish he had a French accent.
Which all of this, it seems so unfrom software
It
in a
does.
in a good way, right? Like, it's obviously there are some characters in the Souls like, but they always feel very hollow, right? We just attach on to things like Onion Bro because he has the most personality
Yeah, but
in a group of
snarky dystopia is just I don't know
yeah.
if we've experienced that.
No, but I just enjoy that there are some people that I can actually feel some attachment to, right?
Yeah, yeah, and for a
Like
game where
I'm
you
gonna care if
never
Rusty dies, you know. I'm gonna
yeah.
care if I have to kill him. I don't even want to kill Mitchell or whatever.
And that's saying something in a game where you never see a person's face.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
only hear their voices, you only see their call sign and their emblem, and then everything else is just dialogue that
yeah,
you get either at base or while you're around doing the missions. So yeah, so you have the missions where you're just killing stuff. You have the missions where you're attacking large cannons or bases. You have the missions where you're fighting very specific hard enemies. And then you have these larger scale battlefield ones, which are my favorites, where,
right.
you might have a couple allies and you're, like Wall Climber, I think is the first one, where I played that
Good
one a bunch of
mission.
times. It's a good mission because not only, do you have a variety of things to fight and ways to go about it, and you can really experiment with how you're kitting your build out, you can actually make tactical choices for how to go about that mission. So if there's a bunch of heavy cannons pointing your way, you can flank them. You can go with a build that is really agile and can like get underneath them and totally, make their loadouts like arbitrary. And then you usually have a really cool boss fight in the end, like the one we're talking about with the ice snake or whatever it's called.
There is, for a level-based design, there is so much space and of course verticality in the different levels that
Yeah.
it feels like the second you go into it, there is, unless if it's just like a one-on-one fight sort of thing, there's a lot of different ways to go about doing everything, which I think helps play into the idea of yeah, we want you to experiment and try different things, especially if this isn't working, but you can definitely play this game your way
Oh
and
yeah,
however you
absolutely.
want it. Which, I mean,
But
is Armored Core, but this is probably Armored Core at its finest for everything.
however, you can't equip 4 swords
Yeah, I know that's
and go
well,
into like a blender sort
and
of
I
build.
kind of wish I had more arms sometimes too, you know?
Everybody needs more arms.
Yeah. Or just more back, you
Or
know?
like, why can't I put assault rifles on my feet?
Look, I want funnels and missiles. I really don't want to decide between the two. And while we're at it, I might as well have a giant cannon on my back.
On your cod piece. Yes, you're back.
Yeah.
You should
Well,
just be a giant
it's like
cannon.
tank legs, but the middle of the tank, it actually has like the tank cannon. Yeah. There we go. All right. I mean, it is tank.
What's up, buddy? You compensating for something? Skadoosh.
Skadoosh.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot of cool moments. Sorry, I'm dying over here. There's a lot of cool moments with the different, the chapter ending missions, I guess you would say. And it usually is just a tough boss fight.
Right.
You have, I think the first one is actually where you meet Rusty. Well, you have like the attack helicopter, and that one is just to
Yeah.
tutorialize you and show you how to go about, why swords are important.
Yeah, well, that's literally what it's for, which is actually good. It literally shows you like, hey, you
Get up in
know,
that ass.
get up in that ass and break the stagger, do
Yes.
damage with the sword. It's very much so needed, at least unless you come up with something that can equally stagger an enemy.
Yeah, you could definitely return to that with something, not that they let you. For some reason, you have to use that build on that.
And
Um,
I
but
just
yeah,
mean in
it,
general.
it it just teaches you how to employ the right maneuvers, and sometimes you just have to rush a boss so it can't hit you with a bunch of missiles. And it's like, okay, this boss only shoots missiles, therefore I have to get up in its face and just do a bunch of devastating attacks, and then it can't do anything to me. Then you have like the big steamroller boss that you come up to next, where the way to kill him is to make sure that you can get behind him, because that's where he can't
Yeah.
shield. And each of them is tough until you figure out exactly what's going on. The spider was the one that kicked my ass, and I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the sea spider. Yeah, that thing destroyed me relentlessly. I mean, the first one that kind of started to give me difficulty was until I really figured things out was the unmanned craft with the energy barrier
Um, yes.
that
Wait,
like
that's
it shoots like a million missiles at you and has an
oh
energy
yeah,
shield.
yeah,
Because that's
yeah,
like the only thing. It's, okay, so swords do break energy barriers, but the only other thing that really does any well, that's that's not true. I realize that that is actually a stat on weapons as well that you can look at, but from my at least at that point in time, the only thing that I know that could break like kinetic barriers or whatever they're called, the energy shields,
Yeah, yeah.
is either beam swords, like melee weapons, or the little bubble blaster things, right?
Yeah, which I tried those out once and I was like, not for me. And I moved
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I really don't like them. I mean, I guess
I'm,
they
yeah.
shoot, they do a lot of like just general chip damage. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like they have their use. It's just, it has to be useful and appeal to your muscle memory and sensibility.
yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be beating your head against it. And that's why I just dumped everything into explosives and lasers. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's
But
what works for me. I like to put all of my oomph in, a few shots versus a couple, like rapid fire.
yeah, but I think that boss reiterated to me that you need to get up in that ass,
Ugh.
and then the spider boss again. You had to reteach me that I was not, in fact, getting up in that ass, and I needed to.
It's an easy lesson to forget.
That might be the last time I say that. I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah,
There's
we'll
still
see.
like, I don't know, 20 minutes left of this podcast. You
Yeah,
can
pretty much.
get up.
Luckily the ice the ice worm was just easy, but just
It
very
was
schematically
cool.
cool. Yeah,
It was
I
just cool.
that was honestly so a weird thing for me to think about, but that was such a great use of lighting, I think, in a video game
Yes.
because you could see like the laser charging in the background just from like a big glow like over a mountainscape that just looks like you get that sense that there is a giant ass fucking laser charging
Yeah.
about to obliterate this thing.
And
Which
like four of you are just skating around on the ice around this giant worm, wondering where
yeah,
it's going to pop up out of the ice, and you're firing. And then, your character has been equipped with this electric pin missile that's going to like break the first barrier of the ice worm's defense. And when I say ice worm, it is a giant robotic snake that drills into the ice and, is just kind of it's this ancient super tech, I don't
yeah,
know,
that is constructed with some type of material that has
coral.
sentience and
It's
yeah, apparently,
unmanned,
yeah, that's apparently what.
but either way.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
They're trying to
So
paint the bigger picture, which they do, of the
yeah,
universe, which
it's basically a big turf war between a bunch of factions on this planet that I don't know why anybody wants anything to do with this planet because it seems like hell. Like
horrible.
literally they found
Yeah.
hell. Um
I mean, it's
Fires of
corporations that
Rubicon.
they became, like a universal power, and but which is always what
Are we far
armored.
from that?
No, but
It, yeah.
this is on a, like literally a universal scale, like the universe.
This would be Mars if they found oil on Mars.
Yeah,
That's what this game is.
yeah,
But yeah, and then you break down the first shield, and then there's rule of three for video game bosses. You break down the shield 3 times, and your buddy Rusty shoots the giant plasma cannon, coral cannon, and it does this really cinematic thing of just dropping out the soundtrack and almost the ice worm comes up out of the ice and like almost freezes in midair, and he adds this little one liner. It's like, better keep your distance. And you're like,
watch out for friendly
oh.
fire. Kadoosh! Yeah, it's great. It
uh,
is.
Jap- the Japanese really know how to make a cool fight scene.
Yeah. It's a lot of that game is again my whole recollection of the Armored Core series is playthrough mission, whatever, playthrough mission. Like this is great, but I'm just running through. Now all of a sudden I'm fighting some
God.
boss that has some it's like there's apparently some big significance that I completely missed the memo about because it never said anything about it, right? And
Yeah.
bam, beat that into the game, like that's
Yeah.
it. That's all that's going on. This is like way more build up, way more interaction between the different characters. But there's different characters to interact with, really.
Yeah.
Other than just your your
Your
previous
typical.
AI or
Yeah.
handler or whatever was in the original ones.
It kind of reminds me. I had flashbacks to the Radon fight from Elden Ring,
Yeah,
where all these people that you've been doing missions with and talking to, they all gather in this big battlefield, and all of a sudden, this gigantic Titan comes from the moon to destroy you, and now it's just like it's very similar in that. So clearly, that's an example of what they've culminated with
yeah.
and brought to this game that may not have been there without the strides that FromSoft has taken.
I like the shift to a more narrative experience. I mean, it's still more not environmental storytelling, but environmental storytelling, right? They are painting again. They're painting the picture of this whole universe and everything that Armored Core is really about, and trying to delve more into, um, I guess, the different sort of things that go on between these warring companies, really,
Yeah.
and the mercenaries that fight for them, and I guess the idea of modified humans, like a lot of the mercenaries are, or if not all, are like modified humans
Genetically modified
through
puppets,
core. Well, it's
essentially.
like they use coral
Yeah.
to modify their bodies, right? Because there's some type of symbiosis shit going on there. I don't know, right?
Yeah. So from the start, it's very clear that whoever you are, you're a tool.
Yeah,
And then you start to communicate with this ethereal presence, um, with a lady voice, and she
yeah.
starts telling you about. I have no idea what's going on,
I
but
don't know
I'm
either.
actually
I
interested
like
in
it. Yeah, I
finding out.
am. Yeah. Like I want more. I hope it's just it continues to be at least as fleshed out as it is so far, because
Yeah.
that's almost more than we've gotten from software games ever.
Yeah, on the nose, storytelling.
Except for
And
maybe like Sekiro. I guess
yeah,
Sekiro is a bit
it's more
more
of a linear experience, I would
right.
say.
A little
Um,
bit.
but
But
yeah,
it is
and like
kind of
after you beat that ice worm, it's just like it's about to get crazy. Like here's chapter 4 or whatever chapter it is. And so it really I don't know that it's a midpoint, but it feels kind of like a midpoint of the game.
honestly the game's a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So,
it. And apparently, when you go through New Game Plus, there's different missions and stuff.
ooh.
So that and different like endings and outcomes,
I
whatnot.
still find myself terrified that it's just going to hand my ass to me. I'm just gonna hit a wall. But, you can always take to the internet and find cheap builds or something if you really get stuck.
It's true, but hey, I mean, I when I say that Spider Boss just beat me down relentlessly. It beat me down relentlessly until I was just like, okay, like, what do I really need to do here? Or at least what works for me is hey, let's go back to what From Software literally told me from the beginning. All right, get good, Matt. Get into its face
Yeah. Change things up.
and get
Are
up in
you
that ass. All right,
Here's
last
the
time, I swear.
last time. Here's the important question. Are you using a shield?
No.
Me neither.
Hey, okay. Shields are for,
Certain people. I
certain
used a
people.
shield one time and I was like, yeah, this
I
doesn't.
haven't used it. I think it's a really cool addition. So they just have that. I'm always fine with more options, but you have to pass up either an extra gun or missiles or cannon or whatever you want to put on your back for that.
It's
Yeah,
simple. If you're blocking, you're not firing.
that is true.
I mean, you're still firing with like this hand and the two shoulder mounted weapons, but this hand is just blocking when it could
Yeah,
be firing and
you
shooting
could be firing something.
something
Yeah,
else
yeah.
or slashing, whatever.
I mean, obviously, I think especially in a melee oriented build, you could definitely use it to help you get in closer, without taking too much damage. Maybe in like a really light build, but then I'm really just gonna be focused on dodging and getting in their face super quick.
Getting in, getting up
Yeah,
in the,
no, I won't
getting
do
up.
that.
You want to say it?
There's a time and a place. All right. We're not
No.
talking about boss fights here. We're just talking about generally going around. And,
First of all, you can get up in anything's ass.
yeah, it's true. They die
Even if,
relatively quick. I could, or I could just shoot them twice with my beam weapon. That's what it's there for.
but you don't ever come up to like a helicopter that's you could boost into and kill it, but you just decide to use your strongest weapon just to flex, just to like
Oh yeah.
to destroy it on an ethereal level.
I'm gonna charge up this shotgun, this shotgun blast to shoot just a giant beam that surrounds it basically.
At like an
Uh,
Apache helicopter.
how cool is destroying warships and just
Oh my
getting up
god,
to
that's my
the
favorite.
bridge and literally just pulling a like a Gundam 101 sort of thing and
I,
destroying the bridge.
I've refrained from saying it until now, but this, and I know for a lot of people, like Armored Core was more significant than Gundam ever was, but I was more into Gundam during the period where this game is harkening back to for me, which is the
Yeah,
PlayStation 2 era. I loved Gundam games, even though a lot of them sucked. I loved Gundam shows. And this is kind of like the ultimate Gundam experience that you can get in 2023. Like
yeah.
this, it's
Well,
not just Armored Core. You can really approach it with an understanding of like how Gundam Wing or G Gundam worked.
I feel like mechs as a whole are always just one big thing, right? Like one
Yeah.
big community. Uh, it's all like I don't know. If you like Armored Core, you probably like Gundam. If you like Gundam, you want anything that you can get your hands on video
Let's
game
use
wise that
mech.
that has mechs,
But
right?
they
Uh,
animated the shit out of this one. Just not even
they
just
but
the
yeah, they no,
dialogue.
they definitely animate the shit out of this
Not
one
even just the
for
dialogue, the
sure.
way you move, where you're
Yeah,
like, do 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 do, and then you like blow past someone, turn around, and do like a 360 sword strike,
yeah,
and you're just like, that was freaking cool.
yeah. No, which is definitely awesome. And I think a lot of the art design and the mech designs and stuff were guys from Gundams and guys from which you can definitely see from
Yeah, especially the
Evangelion.
legs.
Yeah. Um well Evangelion for that one of the first light mech designs with the shoulder
Yeah,
things that come up
yeah,
like that. It's
yeah,
like, oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely
yeah.
definitely the Evangelion guys, but then yeah, I mean a lot of Gundam here. And it does feel very animu, which
Animu.
that's what you want. That's
It
what
is
we
what you
all
want.
want. Yeah,
Yeah,
when you're playing mech.
yeah.
That's why I like
Exactly.
Armored Core 4 so much, because it just felt like I could finally really be fast and just get up all up in that ass. And this intensifies that.
It does. It does. Um, yeah, I'm into this, and I think my favorite thing was that it took one mission and barely like the first 10 seconds of that mission for me to grasp the control of the mech. And I was just like, oh, yeah, no, this is intuitive. Everything on this controller makes total sense. Everything with each of these weapons makes total sense. So I feel like if I put this down to play some other stuff and come back to it later, just to like, oh, I want to play some more Armored Core for a little bit, it's not going to be this gigantic learning curve to get back into the game. I'll just be able to pick it up and play a little bit more. And I think that's going to be a good setup for like the rest of the year for when I
Yeah,
just want to dip back in. Because there's a lot of games.
there is a
Freaking
ton of games.
Starfield comes out in 5 days.
But I know. So far I'm not disappointed with this one at all. That's relieving, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah.
That it's good and it has surprised me in a lot of ways that I just did not expect, right?
I
Like
agree.
again, I expected the game to be shorter. I didn't expect all these sort of story elements that I actually care about, right? Come into play. All the Ace Armored Core has always had build diversity, but this really
Yeah,
feels like there is maybe a significant difference between how this thing plays and this thing plays, which is awesome.
it
Uh,
feels completely realized.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they,
yeah, like how Armored Core should have always been from the
yeah.
get go.
it doesn't feel like,
or want it to be.
yeah, it may not deliver for everybody, but it feels like a complete experience.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of what I really could complain about with it. I've tried. Um,
Like I
is
said,
it
I just have one, and I just don't even know. It's like I'm conflicted. I almost enjoy how it does remind me of like the PlayStation 2 area of gaming.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
just like to see what more it could possibly do, you know.
Yeah, if it was a little broader in scope, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, would it be the same game if it wasn't
Yeah.
segmented the way it
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. I really don't know.
Because you're
I don't
really optimizing when you go on these missions and when you
yeah.
try to complete them, it's very run based. And I mean, your missions could be 10 minutes, they could be 2 minutes. Some of them are over like that, and it's just, that's just how it works. Um,
Which is actually good because sometimes you just want like those short missions, and those are especially good for farming up
it's
money early, I think.
yeah, it's not a super tall order to do that. I do wish. Okay, one nitpick, I guess. Now that I'm thinking about it, um, some of the some of the missions really try to be sneaky,
Oh
and that
yeah.
can be annoying. Like there's one where it's like, well, you have to defend against all these warships that are coming in, and um, basically the PCA or whatever the people that got the ice worm in the first place and sent that off. They're like, oh, you have to defend this space station or this spaceport from this attacking force, and you get there so what I did for that mission was I loaded up on everything that I thought would be useful in that mission. You get to the mission and it's just kind of a bait and switch. Now there's two mechs that have destroyed everything, and it's like a 2-on-1 fight, and you're like, okay, that's great. I wasn't prepared for that at all, and now I basically just have to reload and reassemble.
I think you picked a different mission than me when it first gives you the choice.
Gives you a choice.
Yeah, so it right before, is that right before or after?
It's before you fight the ice worm. I know that, and I think
Yes. So before that, there is a mission where it literally says you have a choice. Either attack the PCA special forces or work with the Liberation Front and uh whatever they call it. Yeah. With yeah,
hmm,
the the people that are from the planet to
the losers.
yeah, and destroy one particular uh one particular like enemy, like tank enemy thing. And so if you choose
Hmm.
whichever one you choose, you can't do the other one. And I think that actually starts to split the
Oh.
storyline up a little bit, maybe, but I don't know.
I thought you just got all the missions, and I don't remember
In
having a
this
choice
particular,
system, but I
yeah,
must
in
have
this
missed
particular
it.
case, it literally just it's like you have like four missions at the time, brand new missions, two or whatever. And this it literally says on it, there's a little icon. If you hover over the mission, it
Uh,
says choice.
they should make that more clear. I did not notice that.
They should, especially there's no like introduction to them being like, hey, you know, you can't do both.
Yeah,
You don't have enough time to do both. You got to do one or
yeah.
the other.
But sometimes I would like the briefings to be a little bit more clear about what you're going to do. And I get like story stuff, but it's like, okay, I brought my tank. I should have brought something completely different because you told me I would be doing this, and you
Well,
were lying.
so the well, hold on. The well, are those like the assassin guys or whatever? That might be before
I don't
that.
remember entirely. All I know is they were saying defend this base from an attacking army,
Yeah,
and then you get there and the army's been destroyed, and there's like two. It the mission winds up being not what it's supposed to be, and it's like,
yeah.
well, that would have been nice to know. And then going back and replaying them, it's not always clear what. Sometimes I want to go replay a mission that doesn't include a giant boss fight, and
Yeah.
it doesn't always tell you when a boss is included in that mission when
Yeah.
you're replaying. And I
And
wish that
most
was
of the time
there.
it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little annoying for replaying, but other than that, it's fine. You just have to remember, I guess. But that's it. That's Armored Core 6. We
That
both
is.
clearly like it a lot.
Yeah. I could go on forever. But
Anything else important to say?
not really. I mean, I guess if I had a little another gripe, I feel like a lot of this performance, the game actually runs remarkably well, like
Hmm.
insanely well. Like, there's literally no problems whatsoever on my like medium hardware computer. Running on at least high settings here, but there isn't too much detail, which is one of the reasons why it runs probably exceptionally well. So I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's hard to really um understand the scale sometimes. Like when you're seeing buildings, there isn't too many like cars or anything like that that would really give you that sense of that how big
Immersion.
of a mech you are. And then there's other just objects that are just so ridiculously large. You're just
Yeah.
kind of like, well, I don't know. I still feel like a
I
human
get
size.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, there's sometimes a diorama feel to
Yeah.
things, or like that you're looking at an asset build instead of a really finely designed
Yeah.
world. Yeah, like you're not seeing cars driving around and details on the buildings. It's mostly just like building one, building two, stuff to put on top of the building, and but you're not
Yeah,
getting a lot of
that's it.
detail.
Which also does feel just very PlayStation
PlayStation 2,
2,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, era for sure.
It's like,
Like
no, it's all about the big picture, not like don't look too hard. Don't
yeah,
look too hard at that.
yeah,
Because I do
because
find
it just
myself
doesn't have it.
stopping, especially in like the destroyed and flooded cities.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh, it looks cool, but then I'm like, it looks fake.
yeah, yeah. It feels like I'm playing PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that like some things look quite amazing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the mechs look awesome, very well detailed there.
They,
Extremely. That was
I
clearly
mean,
the focus.
those things look freaking real.
That is like some of the things that I'm talking about where I wish they could find out a way to make it maybe a little bit more immersive. I mean, even
Yeah.
if that's, a world where I'm flying around in big ships to get the planets to drop in to do missions or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. All right. There you have it. Um, we will probably, I don't know that we'll be ready to talk Starfield because thinking schedule wise, um, that's coming out, yeah, pretty much a week from today. So we'll be just starting that up. But the following week will probably be Starfield week, where we talk about
Ooh,
our first
Wednesday.
10. Yeah, it's coming out Wednesday, which is a weird date for release. So we'll probably do a retrospective episode next week. Um, we're still working through that format and what we're maybe considering evolving it into. But for now, maybe we'll just focus on retrospective, and then the following week we'll talk about Starfield. Um, if you have any questions, as always, please send them into thenerdinggrounds@gmail.com. Follow us on YouTube, social medias, TikTok, all that jazz. And most importantly, be kind and enjoy your week and or weekend.
I
Bye bye.